Hey guys, Mr. Backever here. In this video, we're going to focus on solving a system of linear equations using substitution. As we're looking at solving a linear system using substitution, there's a few steps that we're going to follow to help us out with the process. Step number one says that we're going to take a look at the equations that we've got, and we're going to pick one of the equations to work with in order to try to get a variable alone. And it doesn't matter if you choose to get x or y alone. This process will work exactly the same way regardless of which one you use. So we just want to work on getting one of our variables alone. Step number two, we're going to substitute that expression that we just got from step number one into our other equation, and then we're going to go through and solve to get an answer for one of the variables. And then the last step, once we get an answer for one of the variables, we're going to take that answer that we got from step two and go back up to step number one and plug that value into that equation to help us solve for our other missing variable. If we think about when we're solving a linear system graphically, we're looking for the point where our two lines cross. It's an ordered pair. The same thing is true here. We're still trying to get an ordered pair, an x and a y value, for our answer. So as we take a look at this first example, we've got the system of equations y equals 3x plus 2 and x plus 2y equals 11. Thinking about those steps that we just went through, step number one said that we wanted to pick an equation to work with and get one of the variables alone. And if we look at what's happening in here, this first equation on the left-hand side already has that y value all by itself. So step number one is actually taken care of for us. Now, step number two is where the actual substitution comes into play. This method is called the substitution method, so we're going to do a little replacing. And because this equation says y equals 3x plus 2, what we're going to do is we're going to take this 3x plus 2 and we're going to plug it into the other equation for the y variable. And we're doing that again because this says y equals. So we're going to plug it in for the y value. So when we do that, we're going to get x plus 2 times, we're replacing that y with the 3x plus 2, and this is still equal to 11. Now what we're supposed to do with this is go through and solve to figure out what the variable answer is. We've gotten rid of all of the y variables, so the only thing that we have left in here is x. So we're going to be solving to figure out what x is equal to. As we look at solving this equation, what I notice first is I see this 2 outside of this set of parentheses. So what I'm going to do is take that 2 and distribute it in. So we're going to have x plus, now when I take 2 times 3x, that's going to give me 6x. And when I take 2 times 2, that's going to give me plus 4. And this is still equal to 11. Now we're going to solve to get x in here, and I see that we have a couple of x's on the left-hand side. So those are like terms that we're going to be able to combine. So if we take x and we add 6 more x's, then we've got 7x plus 4 equals 11. We want to solve to get x alone, so I'm looking at that plus 4. I'm going to subtract 4 on each side of the equation, so that should leave us with 7x equals 7. And we've got one more step that we're going to take. We want to get rid of that 7 that's in front of the x, so we're going to divide both sides by 7. And that should leave us with an answer of x equals 1. So that's the end of step 2. We did the substitution, and then we went through and solved to get our variable alone. Now, step number 3 says that we're going to take this answer that we got and go back to the equation in step number 1. So that's going to be this y equals 3x plus 2 equation. We know what x is. We know that x is equal to 1. So we're going to take that 1 and we're going to plug it in for x to help us solve to figure out what y is. So this is going to say y equals 3 times 1 plus 2. And now we're going to solve this in order to get y. So 3 times 1 is 3. And if we add 2 to that, 3 plus 2 is 5. So we get a y value of 5. Now we're going to take these two answers that we got, and we said that our answer represents a point. It's an ordered pair. So we want to write it as a point. The first number, your x, is 1. The second number, your 5, is your y value. So the answer for this system of equations is the point 1, 5. As we look at our next example in here, we've got the equations x equals 2y minus 6 and 4x plus 6y equals 4. Step number 1 says that we want to take a look at the equations that we've got and try to get one of the variables alone. And as we look at that first equation, this one's already solved to have x alone. We've got x equals 2y minus 6. So step number 1 is taken care of for us. Step number 2 says that we're going to take this information and do some substitution in the other equation. So we're going to take the 2y minus 6, and in the other equation, we're going to plug that in for the x value, since this equation says x equals. So what we're going to end up with is 4 times 2y minus 6 plus 6y equals 4. Now notice in this equation there are no more x's in here, so we're going to be solving to figure out what y is equal to. What I notice first on the left-hand side here is that we've got this 4 times this set of parentheses. So I'm going to do a little distributive property. 4 times 2y is 8y, and 4 times negative 6 is going to give me negative 24, and then we've got plus 6y equals 4. On the left-hand side, I notice that there are a couple of things that have y's on them. We've got the 8y and the 6y. Those are like terms, so we're going to add those together to get 14y. We still have the minus 24, and this is still equal to 4. We're solving to get y alone. I'm looking at this minus 24. In order to get rid of that, we're going to add 24 on both sides of our equation. So that's going to leave me with 14y equals 28. One more step in order to get y alone. We've got this 14 in the front, so we're going to divide both sides of our equation by 14. And that should leave us with an answer of y equals 2. Now I'm going to start building my ordered pair answer here. This is a y value, so it's the second number in the ordered pair, so that's 2. Now we still need to figure out what our x value answer is. So we're going to take this y value and go back up to our equation from step number 1, and we're going to plug in the 2 for that y value, since that's what y is equal to. So we're going to have x equals 2 times that y value of 2 minus 6. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 minus 6 should give me an x value of negative 2. So I'm going to fill that in on my ordered pair here. So my answer to this system of equations is the ordered pair negative 2, 2. Now as we take a look at this third example, when we're doing step number 1, we're trying to get one of the variables all by itself. In the first two examples, that has already been done for us. As we take a look at the equations that we're given this time, we don't have a variable that's all by itself on one side of the equation. So there is a little bit of work that we're going to have to do for step number 1 this time. As we're deciding what variable we're going to try to get alone, we want to look at the numbers that are in front of the variables. And it's easiest to work with an equation when you have just a 1 in front of a variable or no number at all. So as we look at this first equation where it says plus y, there's no number in front of that y, so it should be fairly easy for us to solve in order to get y alone. What we would want to do is take this 3x and move it over to the other side of the equation. Because it's a positive 3x, we would need to subtract 3x from both sides of that equation. Now when we do that, we're going to get y equals negative 3x minus 7. And now this equation has one of its variables all by itself on one side of the equation. So we have taken care of step number 1. Now step number 2 says that we're supposed to take this information. We've got y equals negative 3x minus 7, and because it's y equals, we're going to take that and plug that in for the y variable in our second equation. So we're going to end up with negative 2x plus 4 times negative 3x minus 7, and this is equal to 0. Now we want to solve to get our variable alone, so I'm looking at this 4 that's outside of this parentheses. We're going to distribute that 4 in. So we're going to have negative 2x. If we take the 4 times the negative 3x, that's going to give us negative 12x. And if we take the 4 times the negative 7, that's going to give me negative 28. And this is equal to 0. On the left-hand side, we have this negative 2x and this negative 12x. We can combine those So we get negative 14x minus 28 equals 0. We're trying to solve to get x alone. I'm looking at this minus 28. To move it over to the other side, we're going to have to add 28 on both sides. So that's going to give me negative 14x equals 28. We want to get rid of that negative 14 that's attached to the x, so we're going to have to do a little dividing. We're going to divide both sides by negative 14. So on the left-hand side, we're going to get x equals. On the right-hand side, when we take 28 and divide it by negative 14, we're going to get negative 2 as our answer. Now remember, we're building an ordered pair as our answer. This is the x value, so it's the first number in the ordered pair, but we still need to figure out what the y value is. In order to figure out what that y value is, we're supposed to take that answer that we just got from step number 2 and go back to the equation from step number 1. Now that was this y equals negative 3x plus 7 equation, and we're going to plug in that negative 2 that we just got for the x value. So we're going to end up with y equals negative 3. We're replacing the x with the negative 2 because that's what x is equal to, and minus 7. Now negative 3 times negative 2 is going to give us positive 6, and if we subtract 7 from that, then we're going to get a y value of negative 1. So we'll fill that in on our ordered pair, and the answer to this system of equations is the point negative 2, negative 1. That's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching.